Everyone, we're live. You've just probably got an email, hopefully, that's just linked you to the bylaws that we are discussing today. So I will hand the floor over to Femke.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, so following the hearing this morning, we now move on to the deliberations, and we will start first deliberating on the keeping of animals, bees and poultry bylaw, and later on we'll separately discuss the dogs. So a brief introduction to what we're going to do today. So I'll talk a bit about the deliberation process, just as a reminder. I'll explain how we got here, where we are today, and then we will go through all the feedback from the submitters using the summary document, so not the individual submissions, but the summary document, and we will answer any questions that you might have, and pause to get your direction on any possible changes. So the deliberations process starts with the assumption that we assume that all submissions are read in the full submission booklet, and this is the moment to not just acknowledge all the submitters that spoke, but also all the written submissions. And this is the opportunity for Council to deliberate on the different feedback provided, and for us to answer any questions that you might have. So the review process of the keeping of animals, bees and poultry bylaw started about a year ago, and it started with the process of an internal review initially, and the conversations with stakeholders. We had, as you possibly remember, a first workshop in December actually talking about the 5 bylaws that we are reviewing this year, and later on we had a specific dedicated workshop in March on this bylaw specifically. Following that workshop, we updated the bylaw with your feedback, and that's what went out to the community for consultation in June and July at the same time as the animal control policy and bylaw. And today we are here to deliberate on all of that. All right, so this would be the time to please ask you to open the summary of feedback document. And when you're ready, we will start with the first question. So the first question that we asked the community is sort of the general question, is saying, do you support the draft bylaw as presented? And the feedback is on pages 3 to 8. On the screen, you just have an overview of some of the statistics. So we received 92 responses to this question, with 68% indicating that they are in support of the current bylaw as presented, and 32% not in support. Some of the reasons are on the screen. Submitters indicate it's clearer, or they say it references responsible ownership. And some of the reasons against or topics raised are the topics that you see there. Some questions around the urban area, as stated in the bylaw, questions around horses on roads, comments on council overreach, and questions on poultry rules. So we won't have the summary on the screen.
All right, Councillor Cameron.
I'm just seeking, can I just ask a question, please, Madam Chair? Yeah, I'm just seeking clarification in the bylaw with regards to the horses.
Yes.
The not riding on the berm or leading on the berm is for urban area only, is that correct? In the rural area, you can ride on the roadside berm.
Correct.
That
yes.
is correct. Yeah.
The bylaw states the riding or leading of a horse in an urban area. Yes.
In an urban area. And
correct.
What is urban? Residential D, like out in the big sections out in, that is urban area?
Yes, that's correct for this bylaw. Yes. So, as I can speak to there's one proposal made to, in the original draft, it states the riding or leading of a horse in an urban area is permitted on the road, not on any footpath or berm. And as you will see in the officer comments, we'll go through, there's a suggestion to make a change there. So if we just go through the summary feedback, and I'll say the page number, and if you have any questions, we can talk to that. So I'll start on page 4. So it won't be on the screen, so you have it on your own screens. Page 5. And this is where the horses are, the questions on the horse riding on the road is addressed, and councillors are, officers are proposing to, that we can make, if council decides, we can make the change to allowing it on the berm and the road, but not the footpath. That is for council to discuss.
Councillor Everest.
So just clarity, in the urban area, are you now proposing that it would be acceptable on the berm to lead a horse?
That is correct, yeah, if Ian, you would like to.
Yeah, through the chair.
Whoever I'm looking at,
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that's all right. The amendment, the discussion was that when we looked at the berm situation, the concern is that horses can cause damage to berms, and so particularly in wet and muddy conditions and things like that. So that the idea is that we wanted to avoid that as much as possible, but it was also recognised, and it came quite clearly through the submission process, that there was a real conflict potentially for having horses and vehicles in the same traffic lane. So the idea that the proposed change that we've got now is to allow for horses to be on the berm, but where possible they should avoid it, particularly where there's a risk for damage to occur, and if they have to go on the berm in those conditions where it's wet and muddy, they should do it as little as they can. But we're trying to be pragmatic about it. So. Yeah.
So thank you. So does that, I mean, is the alternate though to actually, because they're being walked, I presume, in this case, as opposed to ridden?
I believe riding is also.
Yes, through the chair, so it's both. It says both the riding or leading of a horse in an urban area is permitted on the road or berm, not on a footpath.
So I understand your comment about damage to the berm. Is the alternate led on the footpath, which may be less damaging?
Sorry, through the chair, we've done some research, but having horses on a footpath is considered possibly even more dangerous if you have people walking there and children on bikes and scooters. So what other councils generally do is allowing horses on the road or berm, but not the footpath.
Just to add to that, we also have controls in our transportation bylaw as well, which also relate to animals being on footpaths, and so it would be contradictory to that to allow them on the footpath. It's the paved footpath that's really the issue.
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. And I would have thought a lot of where this is applying, residential D, in that there are no footpaths anyway. They have no choice. It's the road or the berm, and there is no other option. I can see. How are you going to deal if you get a phone call to say a horse has gone down my berm and caused $500 worth of damage to my lovely mow and grass berm? Who's then going to be responsible for that?
This is, through the chair, this is a very good point. Of course, at this point, horses don't need number plates or anything else to be identified. I guess the situation is, and once again, the transportation bylaw does have provisions in it which allow for action to be taken if you can identify a person or persons who damage council verges and berms. It would be a case-by-case situation. It could be as simple as potentially following the footsteps to the to where it ends up, perhaps, but it might, in a lot of instances, I would imagine that enforcement may be difficult, but it's an added possibility if it is causing a nuisance.
Thank you. I was just going to say, common sense tells me if you were on the road and a truck was coming down the road and that was going to make you feel unsafe, I think logic tells you should then move to the berm for safety reasons, but as it says in the bylaw, avoid as much as possible. But I'm thinking Seafield Road or something like that, very busy road. At times it may be safer to move to the berm.
Councillor Hooper?
Thank you, Ian. Can you guide me to where it says in the bylaw about the horses on footpaths? I can see the crossed out, the riding or leading of horse on any footpath, the berm is not permitted. That's all crossed out. So is there...
No, so point 9.2 in the draft bylaw, that the wording there is the riding or leading of a horse in an urban area is permitted on the road, not on any footpath.
Right, yeah, it's further down. Sorry, thank you.
So there's a proposed change to add the berm, and it would be good to get council's confirmation if you're happy for us to make that amendment.
I support that.
Most people in support might need a show of hands, seeing I'm not getting a lot of nodding in support. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilson.
I probably don't support it because I think the urban environment, you're not just talking, rural D, we're out in sort of the country, I'd call it. You're actually talking out here. They could they walk their horse down on the other side of the main road, just the side of the street here, under the trees and the grass, which probably, I think most people would think is pretty unreasonable. And nowadays in an urban, we're not 1850, where, now horses are not a working animal as such. They are a recreational animal, you'd call them. So therefore to have them walking down, people's nicely mowed berms in town is probably, I don't think that's right.
Councillor Cameron?
I take your point, Richard, but in reality, I have not seen a horse walking in town. In reality, it's not an attractive place for people to ride or walk their horses. So I think it's unlikely that if this bylaw goes ahead and suddenly everybody's going to run their horses into town is unlikely. You do see horses, working horses in Christchurch, doing touristy type of things, and or in the bigger cities. But I think unless there's some change in the law, I don't think we can prohibit people walking their horses in town. And if they do, well, we don't want a horse to be hit by a truck and the rider hurt, or a person walking with children on the way back from school, and they're going to be hurt. So I think we've got to be a wee bit, to Ian's point, a wee bit pragmatic about it and do the best approach we can. But I don't think we're going to, just because it's allowed, I don't think suddenly 100 horses are going to march down the street, down East Street.
Cool. So, Councillor...
I'd refute that, because I think that once you allow it, it's allowed. Therefore, there's no reason that people can't do that. It's common sense doesn't come into this. Effectively, it comes into, once you've allowed it, it's allowed. So I think we can't complain when horses walk down there.
Councillor Gilgerson?
They're still not allowed on the footpath, are they? Oh. So if they can't get over the footpath, I think we should be okay in town.
Right. So all those... Oh, sorry, Councillor Everest.
I really want clarification in relation to those, what I would call small blocks, where, two girls are going to ride together, one's got to ride to the other girl's place, and how does she get there, or he, but typically it's our daughter, so she, I mean, how do they actually, how's that allowed? Or is it allowed with what we've got?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's currently allowed.
So with the way that the bylaw that we're proposing with the amendment is that your daughter or whoever's riding their horse with their friend, they would be allowed on the berm. If it was a wet or soggy conditions, we'd be encouraging them to go onto the road proper as much as we could to protect that berm. But of course, if traffic was there or there was a situation where it was dangerous, the allowance would be that they would go on the berm to keep themselves safe. that's what we're trying to do to have that. And that was pretty much as a direct response to the consultation responses that we had where people were raising those conflicts where we said actually having an arbitrary restriction where there was no allowance to go on the berm when actually it was a damage to the berm issue that we were concerned about. So that's why we've sort of dialed it back a little bit and said, okay, under these circumstances, it sort of balances those issues. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Being no further discussion, although,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, councillor Hooper.
So I'm a bit confused because I'm reading 9.2 and it says the riding or leading of a horse in an urban area is permitted on the road, not on any footpath or berm.
Correct. So that is what is currently in the draft bylaw, and following the submissions from the feedback received, on page 6, you can see in response to submitter 169, officers are proposing to change this to riding or leading a horse in urban areas is permitted on the road or berm, not on the footpath. So the proposal is, currently it says the road, not footpath nor berm, and we are proposing to change this to road and berm in a response to submissions, and that is where we are looking for council direction.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a...
Councillor Awesome.
Sorry, but I think that's rubbish because you've gone out and said the other 10,000 people in Ashburton that love their grass berms would have seen this and said, excellent, my berm is protected. And one person or a few people have submitted, I want to do it. And so now we're changing the direction completely. Whereas if you're allowed to, if people had read this and seen that the horses are allowed to ride up and down their berms, they may have submitted saying, I don't want that because I've got a beautifully manicured berm. So we're a minority, I would say, has submitted. So the majority haven't submitted because they expect, it's the old classic, you should always submit in support of something because the people against it may get their way and you haven't submitted, not in the process. So I'm just holding up for the rights of the nice berm owners.
Right. Councillor Gilkinson.
I was just going to comment that the way that I see it is, would you rather have a muddy berm or a dead horse?
Or child.
Right. Councillor.
Well, I think the answer to that is that horses, if people choose to ride their horse on a busy road, they probably need to think of their personal safety because, it's if I rode my horse down the main road, would you say I'm a sensible person doing it? Probably not. You'd say, really, it's a busy road and, you're risking quite a bit. So I think sometimes there's a bit of risk and benefit analysis.
Right, I think we've had enough discussion on this matter, and so I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour that we go with the recommendation, which is the berms and road, please say aye or put your hand up. Not carried, but one. Those who... The majority. Yep.
Right.
Is the mayor voting?
So there's no official votes.
Well, no, but I'm just
yes,
seeing if
yeah.
Liz is... Yep, she hasn't commented, so yep, carry on.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here.
No, that's okay.
I'm just listening.
Yeah. Cool, thank you.
All right, so the issue was addressed on page number 6 in the summary, and we'll move on to page number 7. Page number 8.
Sorry, councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Are we going to, there's some talk there around poultry. When are we going to talk about the number that are allowed and are there differences? And I suppose this is a question. We talk urban and rural, but we have a whole different designation, around our residential C and D and those sorts of things. Do we need to be more specific around, you buy a lifestyle block, I can understand people think they should probably be allowed to keep more birds in general than if you live on a, 500 square metre section in town. And I think maybe we need an approach that signals that, I don't know. And I know it ties back to our district plan too, doesn't it? So that I don't know how that works, if we can want to change it.
Femke.
Yes, thank you. Happy for you to discuss this now or later on as it gets addressed, but we can do it now. That's, yeah. Yep.
It's wherever it's appropriate to have the discussion.
Yes, that it's mentioned in different sections, but
Okay,
that's fine.
so we'll do it now then?
Yep.
Sorry, but one of the points to raise through the chair is the fact that this is, I guess we've got an interaction here between the bylaw and policy and the district plan, and that the district plan talks about what it actually says. It refers to numbers of poultry in residential zones, so it doesn't differentiate between residential C and residential D. And of course, councillors will be aware that at the moment we're restricted in our ability to amend the district plan, and so we're kind of right now a little bit cast and stuck in terms of that provision. So for the bylaw to propose anything else right now, unless very, very carefully worded, it's going to run the risk of being contrary to our other legislative requirements to fulfil. So this is kind of the issue that we have. What I would also say though is that, and one of the submitter mentioned it this morning, is that if we're talking about poultry, I think the submitter said it themselves, I certainly wouldn't say it out of my own mouth, but the illusion was that there are people that possibly do have more than the numbers limited in the district plan in the district in various zones that we probably are completely unaware of. We generally become aware of these things because they cause an issue. And if they cause an issue, we take action against them. These limits are useful as a tool to be able to address those issues. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going out there and we're trying to find people, but if the situation crops up, it's causing a problem, we can take action.
Councillor Gilgerson.
Is there a way where we could say that if there's a property size of X, that it's different? So it's not about residential D or C, because sometimes they might actually be smaller but in those zones. But actually, if you've got 2,000 metres squared, you can probably have more than 12 chickens and it's okay. Can that work with the district plan in the bylaw?
Through the chair, the issue that we have in the district, particularly around residential D and also in certain areas and other parts of our residential zones, is that we do have areas which are zoned for development, which are still being operated either as rural or residential. There's particularly in our outlying communities that have seen quite a bit of growth over the years, and unfortunately what happens is that through the process of growth and development, you have situations where somebody who might have been fine having, say for example, in your example of a 2,500 square metre site, might now be surrounded by residential scale development and it be zoned correctly for it. So for over the last 10 years, you've had a zoning change. These people are effectively held out, and through no fault of their own, the development has gone around them. And so now all of a sudden, the people that surround them have different expectations. That's just the nature of change and development. So actually giving somebody an allowance is a little bit difficult, because there is that conflict that will arise as needs and communities change.
But do you still have the nuisance factor to fall back on?
We do, yes we do, but the trick would be to make sure that the nuisance factor is balanced against what they are allowed to do as of right. So if we said if you have X size of land, you're fine. We're not going to do anything about it. Whereas around you, you've got a completely different set of circumstances. There might be situations where that actually causes a real problem. So the balance is finding controls which are permissive, which allow people to do things, but also aren't so lax that if a situation does crop up, we have the tools to be able to sort of take action and work with people to resolve it. It's a real delicate kind of an art.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. So how did we come up with the number 12 in the first place, Ian?
Through the chair, I, to be honest with you, I am not fully over that. That was before my time here. It may have even been a rollover from the last district plan, but it's been around certainly since 2010 when this plan was developed.
Okay. Yeah, I like Councillor Kilkerson's point around the nuisance factor. I worry about the likes of 10.4, keeping or maintaining a poultry house within, you can't be within 10 metres of a dwelling. If you're in town, unless you've got a big old back section, then, I mean, where I used to have my chickens, I was well within the 10 metres. So I worry that a neighbour, as to Roger's point, there could be a personality dispute, and a clause like that could be what kind of decides a personality dispute because it's in our bylaw. Do you? So how when you mediate an issue between two neighbours, and they say, oh, well, his poultry house is 8.4 metres from his back door, so he's got to get rid of it. How do you go about mediating that?
Through the chair, it is a difficult situation. There will be a lot of occurrences like that, and to a point there will be what we can work with as mediators, and then what drifts into civil action between neighbours when it becomes a neighbour-neighbour dispute on a legal point.
So I'd be inclined to get rid of 10.4 and have your basis around this as your nuisance, and then it gives officers the opportunity to have a look at the situation and say, well, you know, we have spent some time next door and we don't hear overly loud clucking or don't see rats are running around the place or anything like that.
So just through the chair, just to hopefully maybe to provide some reassurance, in that 10.4 there's been an addition raised and as a note, you said that boundaries and buildings not affected by the district plan or other requirements may be reduced or exempted by an authorised council officer where the officer considers the poultry house or poultry run will not result in nuisance. So if it was unreasonable, that would be part of the investigation to say, look, it's not an arbitrary figure. Actually, if there's a discretionary, that there is a discretionary call to say, we've gone to the site, we've seen it, we actually think that 5 metres, 2 metres, 1 metre, whatever it is, in this situation is appropriate, fine, that will let that off. There is an element of discretion there, I grant you, but it's that or it's you have an arbitrary measurement that is...
Yeah, well, once again, I think nuisance factor discounts, I think we should get rid of that. I think that's overreach.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm happy to leave it in just simply because a neighbour or someone who has a problem has to actually take the step of ringing the council, and actually that's the best way to fall out with your neighbour, of doing something like that. So by having a bit of tension there, that the person over the fence knows that rule's there, they have to actually do it properly. That's actually quite a bit of tension. People know that, so therefore they will act better. When if they've got the right to build the thing off the fence next door, they'll just do it. And then the neighbour who's being, they've got to actually physically ring the council, and that's the way you really fall out with your neighbours, when you dob them in.
Councillor Cameron.
Have we had many altercations between neighbours over poultry in the last 5 years?
Thank you, through the chair. A handful over the years, and tends to be around noise and odour, but not so much the close proximity. But we do, we are taking all comments on board here. We try to be as flexible as we can to avoid that legal point where it becomes a civil issue. We try to be as flexible as we can on the numbers. And if it's slightly nearer to the fence, we're looking at, well, okay, but is there no nuisance? If there's no nuisance, then why look at changing the area, the location of the house. So we're always looking at trying to mediate as much as possible in all of this, taking into account the district plan, taking into account that there'll be some vexatious people out there. All of this, we try to be as flexible as possible.
And may I ask you a subsequent question? Do you feel that leaving it in still gives you that flexibility to take that sort of more pragmatic approach and deal with the nuisance factor, if there indeed there is a nuisance factor, and deal with...
For us, as officers on the ground, it's that guidance that we have there that we can refer to. So for us, it works.
Councillor Everest.
So it's just, thank you. I was just coming back to Deb's question before, Ian. You know, do we need some direction? Because you didn't quite answer that. Do we need some direction in terms of size to define that rural-urban? I understand your comment that yes, the boundaries could change over time, but then the nuisance rule applies. So I just wonder whether we can be more definite in terms of what we're actually asking there.
So, through the chair, the district plan has restrictions on what residential Z is, and you can go down to 4,000 square metres in residential D, so that's your defined size. Because we've got, at the moment, the bylaw talks about residential zones, that covers residential D as well. So it's not just what a lot of us would think of as suburban residential, which is the C and below. So that 4,000 square metres is in there, and that's referred to urban and residential areas in the district plan. That's included. So what it would effectively need, I guess, is that we would need to have a think about actually removing residential D from that or other requirements, but then that opens up it changes how we consider the residential areas throughout both these bylaws that we're looking at, and I think unless we did it specifically for this provision, there's quite possibly potentially a lot of work in there. We'd probably need to have a further look at it. As to what
I'm not smart enough in that area and take your advice, but
Yeah.
I'm just trying to perhaps overcome potential problems down the track. That's
Yes.
really where I'm coming from.
If I'm hearing correctly, I'm hearing from councillors that there'll be a size of site which might be considered to be residential in law or policy or whatever, but actually is unlikely to cause an issue. If I'm hearing right, the concern that we have, of course, is that you might have a site which is being sort of subsumed by the surrounding development of land. So even though that site might be okay, it might still be causing more issues from land as it develops around it, where people have different expectations. So that's one issue. The second issue is then, as I say, just making sure that if we were to change the provision and do minimum site sizes, whether or not in that instance we might need to have setbacks and other requirements to actually ensure that even if it was a specific size, that it would still control those effects that we are really concerned about, or whether, to Councillor Hooper's point, it was just dealt with as a nuisance provision, and it was just dealt with that way.
Councillor Gilkison.
How often are you dealing with complaints in urban areas where people have around 12 chickens? Oh, she's got Phil's. Oh, I'll turn up.
Yep.
Do you want to ask her out?
Is that okay? So recently we've had a fair few complaints, but it's not around the actual number. A lot of it is some of them been out wandering on the road, number of rooster complaints, the smell. So it's not so much around to do with the number, it's a variety of complaints.
So then do you usually apply the nuisance factor over number? Does number ever come up? Does anyone ever say, oh, but they've got more than 12, off with their heads?
Okay. Off the top of my head, no, the number doesn't come up. again, roosters, there's just one on a property, and that's causing a nuisance. In regards to the ones wandering, again, it's only about 2 or 3 that have been out on the road. So no, the number and one other one, where it was the smell, obviously the setup of that wasn't appropriate for where it was. It was right along the neighbouring boundary. And then we did have a neighbours at war sort of situation where they complained the setup was on their boundary. So we did ask them to move it away. Again, not to do with the number.
Just one more question. And then in terms of the larger sections that might be residential C or D that are, 2,000 to 4,000 square metres, do you get complaints for that size, or do they roughly kind of keep to themselves?
Yes, so roosters are the main ones, and again, wandering. They don't have a proper setup, so they're out on the roads, wandering along.
Okay.
Councillor Wilson.
With respect to the numbers, 12 chickens laying eggs is 12 eggs. The average householder in town, if you eat more than 12 eggs a day, you're doing pretty well. Because we've got 12 chickens and we have to give them all away. And so it concerns me if we go to 24, 50 chickens, well, that's a commercial activity nearly you're into. So, and I do acknowledge Mr. Bray this morning talking about his different animals, but we're talking in an urban area. We're not, there's always anomalies, and I'm sure council works with anomalies if they're in certain cases, but you need a rule for the standard. Again, I go back to the point where you don't want people having to be fighting to just maintain their basic property rights, because people are allowed to do whatever they like.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. As Roger mentioned, though, Richard, it's not all about egg-laying chickens. It's show chickens. It's a hobby for some people. So he might have 15 beautiful chickens that don't cluck a lot. I think I haven't heard anything in here that nuisance doesn't cover. Smell, nuisance. Chickens on the road, it's a nuisance. I think why are we complicating this so much? I think the nuisance factor, I think, answers your questions as well, Councillor Wilson. So keep it simple, stupid would be my advice.
Sorry. Shall we, the council's direction, we can do some more work on this perhaps. Because it seems like this is a question that councillors are interested in, and we probably do need to have a little bit more thought about perhaps how we might present it back to you. I guess it's just really, is that the view of the council, I guess?
Yeah. Would councillors like some more work done in this area? Because I think we're... Right, show of hands if you'd like some more work done in this area. Oh, I think that's...
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Oh, in the mayor, yep.
With respect to my same question as before, when we went out to the public, we had 12 in there, so many people would have read it and said, yep, 12, sweet, that's all good, I won't submit. But when we look to change it to a different number, which is quite a material change, do we have to go and go out to the public again? Because it's to say you've got 12, everybody would have read it and said 12, yep, that's standard, that's been there, I accept that and move on. But if you said now 25, a lot of people will go, oh, that's ridiculous, I need to submit, but they can't. So can you just, the submission process is what I'm just trying to understand when you materially change it so much.
I guess it does come back to the significance of the issue. So if there was an issue like that, then potentially we could have to go back to the public on it. I guess the issue of this one is that the number is set by the district plan, which we can't have any impact on at this point in time, because there's freezes on all district plan changes. So at this stage, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ian, we can't do much about that number. No. What we could look at is the 10.4, but again, how that interacts, I guess, with the district plan as to how that relates to that.
Councillor Cameron.
Just a question around nuisance. If somebody rang up and said those hens are a nuisance, we've got rats or they're noisy or whatever, how do you enforce nuisance? Like, how do you assess, is that why we have it as a bylaw? Because nuisance is difficult to measure and enforce, like, what is nuisance? Who determines nuisance?
Thank you. Through the chair, it would ultimately come down to me, because what we're trying to establish is if the nuisance is prejudicial to health.
Health.
Yes.
Okay. So
health can be mental health.
Okay.
It can cover a wide degree of things, but it's is it injurious by transferable disease? That would come into nuisance.
So if somebody had 25 hens next to me, because we altered the district plan, and we allowed 25 hens next to me, and I said they're clucking all night and I've got a headache, you would come out and talk to me and determine if I had a stress due to that, and say, well, you've got to restrict your number of hens to the neighbours. Is that correct?
It would certainly be taken into account in an investigation, yes.
If I said they've got 25 hens and they're only allowed 12 hens in the bylaw, how is that measured? What do you do then?
That would come down now to a case review that I'll be talking with senior management about what's allowed and what we've got in our findings, because now we're stepping out of a normal bylaw situation. We've got 12 as the key point, but you're talking now as an example of 25. Well, it's then how do we address that? And we're not here to, there's a lot out there that will say I'm out to have poultry put down. That's not the case. It can be a case of relocating, and we would do that over a timed period. We're open to the flexibility of that.
Is there a fine attached to the bylaws? For breaching the bylaws, is there a fine?
Thank you. Through the chair, the bylaws, where they are connected to an act, like for instance the Dog Control Act, then yes, there is an enforcement fee. In this, we could loosely look at the Health Act as a link.
Thank you.
Right. Councillor Moffat.
I'm just wondering, since no one's quite sure how the magic number 12 came about, is it possible that that came through the Animal Welfare Act or something? So many chickens per square metre or something? Or
Not that.
Thank you. Through the chair, as Ian pointed out, this has been long before our time, mine included, but possibly it would come from somewhere. We're looking at an area, transferable disease, noise, how much noise can travel, and so on.
so if you look for more information for us, you'd look into that side of it?
Certainly we can do that.
So just coming back, so at the moment the restrictions we have around this bylaw are the actual policy itself, so the Ashburton District Council's, plan, the district plan. So while we could seek some clarification, at this point in time it would need to sit within the district plan, is that correct? So going forward from this, because we've had a discussion and we want some more information, so the information we would need to sit within our current district plan, is that correct? So we just need some clarification around size and bits and pieces that would still fit within the plan, is that my understanding?
We can certainly look into how the 12 came about, but we would still be working within that 12.
Thank you. Councillor Hooper, and then we'll go to a discussion.
Just a question. So 12 in the district plan, 12 in the bylaw. Having the 12 in the bylaw allows you to enforce. Is that the reason we have it in both documents?
We say enforce, but I always go back to our approach is to inform, educate, warn.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out why it's in both documents.
Yes, through the chair, if I can answer that. So it is stated in the district plan. It was not stated in the bylaw. So people who will be looking for information on keeping of poultry will be looking in the bylaw, not in the district plan. So it is there as a clarification of what the rules are. So it's just a reference to as it states, as referenced in the district plan.
Thanks.
So, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. The district plan is the district plan. We can ask for more information, but we can't magically change 12 to 5 or 25, whatever it is, because the district plan won't allow it. Residential D is part of the urban area in the district plan. I think this is what we're stuck with in the meantime until the government actually lets us do something with our district plan that's sensible. So, yeah, I mean, back in the day, I'm sure when this came into being of 12, there was a predominance of quarter-acre sections in town. Not the case anymore. Things have changed, but unfortunately, at the moment, we've got one hand tied behind our backs, and I just think we live with it in the meantime. The staff said they can work within this, and it works, so why are we trying to fix something that's not that broken until such time as we have the tools to do it?
Sorry, I was just seeking a point of clarification. So at the moment, the district plan is the district plan, and once we have the new RMA, then maybe there'll be some more things. So maybe, if I read the room, it might not be worth looking at now, given we're hopefully on the verge of the new RMA. Does everybody agree with that? Cool. Thank you. Over to you, Femke.
Thank you. So that's, sorry, that was the question number 1 that we asked the community. So do you support the draft as bylaw as presented? And I think we've discussed the issues addressed on those pages. So we'll move on to the next question. What we asked the community is there's a proposal to add a new clause to the bylaw, and that clause is to address animals causing nuisance or becoming injurious to health. And it was proposed because we have been dealing with situations where, for example, I think the example given in the consultation document was stock escaping enclosures and ending up on the road. And the proposal that we also reflect this in the purpose of the bylaw. So that was the question to the community was, do they support the addition of this clause? And 98 submitters responded to this with 83% in support, 17% not in support. And the different reasons for support is that it improves public safety, it better manages the nuisance or health risks, and supports the case-by-case solutions. Reasons against are referencing existing powers are sufficient, or there's too much council discretion, and there's some concerns about cost or enforcement. So those comments are in the summary starting on page 9. We'll just go through page 9. That's where the question is stated. Then page 10 is where the feedback begins, initially with the people that support it. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you. Submission 228 from Mid-Canterbury Fed Farmers. If I read that correctly, so if cow number 65 gets through the gate, I can be held liable for a $20,000 fine. Is that correct? Is that how that reads? Because what they're saying is if an animal gets out, you instantly jump to the breach sort of thing. You jump to 15.1, and then you jump to 15.2, which is now up to a $20,000 fine. So what they're saying there is if there's, I think it's around becomes, there's a wording they've used there around, what's the word for it? Repeatedly escapes as opposed to escapes. Can you clarify that for me, especially in the rural environment?
Okay, through the chair, firstly, that level of fine is as a prosecution. That's what it could be up to that amount. That's what we're saying there. And sorry, your
Well,
points.
yeah, probably says becoming a nuisance or injurious to health. I'm reading from the consent, including being uncontrolled on a public road.
Yeah.
With no threshold of frequency or fault attached. Yeah. So if a farm animal gets out on the road, and if I use an example, there's a car accident, the person could use this as a form of defence, or say, well, actually, that you breached the bylaw, and that escalates that escape to quite a high level. So I'm just, and what they're saying here is if it's a repeat, they're asking for a threshold on the repeat frequency or fault attached, to understand that every animals get out. That's what they do all day, look to get out. So,
thank you. Through the chair, if this possibly answers the question, in our enforcement procedures generally, we have a risk matrix that we apply, and that brings into effect things like it was a total disregard to the law, bylaws, regulations in place, or it was somebody could have opened a gate and let someone out, something out that's caused the issue, so not down to them. We look at all these kind of scenarios within the risk matrix and gives us a score that we then look at the owner themselves. So we're not just looking at the circumstances, we're looking at the owner. Are they being helpful, or are they just telling us to go away, shall we speak? So, as I say, the full matrix of it will then come into, it just needs a warning and some guidance information on fencing, or it could be it's an enforcement fee applied, or we're looking at prosecution.
So,
and when we're looking at that break between what's enforceable for our level into what's a prosecution case, it's then a case review with senior management and a full investigation that way from senior management as well.
I think what the person's asking though is, or the organisation is asking though, that the total discretion is with council. There's no, so if council decided in its wisdom that any animal getting onto the roads is bad, really bad, the full rate of the law is there's no intermediate phase. That's what they're asking for, an intermediate phase. If an animal gets out due to different circumstances or whatever, there is some discretion. There's some extra discretion in the law, I'm saying, rather than discretion by people at council. It's the.
Thank you. I'll ask Ian to comment as well, but from my perspective, that discretion is that risk matrix that we follow as part of the investigation, rather than going straight from zero to prosecution, for instance.
So, if I can just add through the chair, add to that what Mr. Catchpole said, we use a process generally in enforcement called VADE, and it's a best practice approach, which is an approach to compliance: voluntary, advise, direct, and enforce. And it has stages in it, and it's referenced in other places as well. Enforcement, which is what the concern justifiably of the submitter is, which, as Mr. Catchpole said, is up to 20,000. As a prosecution, that's a prosecution under criminal law. Now, to even lodge a case with the court for an action of that type, the first thing that would be asked of council is whether or not there was an approach that was taken that offered a chance for these matters to be addressed, or unless it was so serious that it justified actually immediately taking action, and that would be, I would say, incalculably rare and hopefully never happens. But generally our approach is very much to work with the person, find out what's gone wrong, give them the opportunity to mend it, and to continue to do that until such time as that approach stops making sense, and that it's not getting the approach through collaboration that we would expect. And at that point, we do have the tools available to say, well, hang on a minute, if you don't start taking responsibility, then we will have to start considering these formal actions.
Councillor Everest.
Yeah, I think that's provided a bit of clarity that I was looking for. Thank you. I guess I give a scenario. So, never had cows on the road before. Cows broke out for whatever, or a cow breaks out for whatever reason. Richard comes down the road in the middle of the night, and the cow ends up on his bonnet, and we're still, maybe injures Richard, but we're still his good night nurse. How do we deal with that?
Thank you through the chair. There's certain circumstances that have occurred in the past where stock have got onto the road through inadequate fencing and the like, and we've worked with the owners to improve the fencing. A cost has been borne, and it's been a charge against the property through rates or to the owner in agreement with them. But we will work hand in hand to try and fix an issue.
Yeah, I'm pleased to hear that the matrix is in place. As a landowner who has a problem with the public on a very regular basis, there are little options left for us sometimes, so sometimes escaping stock is well and truly beyond our control. And I can also say the powers of the law can be very limiting about how we keep our stock in, because you cannot electrify your gate.
Yeah, I guess it hasn't totally dealt with my questions and concerns, because it can be adequately fenced without any trouble. You can have an electrical storm and something bolts over a fence and suddenly left in the middle of the road, and through no fault of the owner, someone is actually going to get hurt, or potentially getting hurt, sorry. And we just want to make sure that this doesn't capture that in our own rules. And as Councillor Ellis said, that becomes a police matter to some extent, and whilst I agree with that, we don't want them to be using our rules to cause charges to be laid.
Through the chair, I think that's a very good point. That this is not just a council issue, and I would just raise the fact that this is a matter that's come up. Yeah, MPI is involved as well, but this is a matter that's come up as a result of instances that our contractors have been involved in, where they've been contracted by police or others who have asked them to deal with wandering stock. The issue is not generally with the one person who's had a horse or a cow or whatever that's got out. The issue is when you have recidivist offenders who refuse to take action, or for whatever reason, and it happens over a period of weeks, months, whatever, where they're going to the same place and they're rescuing the same stock and they're returning it, to give it an ability to actually escalate that action if it's required to solve the problem. And that's what the issue has been.
So I totally get that, and I'm very supportive of it. What I'm trying to do is just make sure that we're not making a rod for our back for some unintended consequence where someone does have a one-off accident.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we're not capturing that. And I guess that's to some extent, and it wasn't just feds, I mean, there was actually a couple of submissions further up as well that raised the same issue, and I just want to make sure we've got that clear, that's all. But thank you for the clarity.
I'm sure that working with my colleagues at the other end of the room there, we could look at the terminology in that section to emphasise the intention to work with landowners where possible.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
I think there is a suggestion there on page 4 at the bottom to include reasonable precautions, because this is a step change to it used to be that if you took reasonable precautions to keep your stock on and they got out in the road, it wasn't your fault, because that's almost a long-standing thing. And this appears to me to be a change to that, where if an animal gets out, you're at fault unless, and it's at the discretion of someone to say, well, it got out, therefore it shouldn't have got out, therefore it's the problem, whereas that long-standing one of reasonable precautions has been a protection to stop you falling into the nuisance category. We're saying that if it gets out, you're in the nuisance category and you've almost got to prove otherwise. That's what concerns me. You've you put everybody over the fence, as it was, an analogy, to start with, rather than some, if you've taken reasonable precautions, you've done everything you can do, and if they get out, well, but if it happens a couple of times, well, that's not reasonable. But it happens once, I would have thought that's, it's just the way it is.
Thank you. I think given that we've had the explanation over the matrix and the Animal Welfare Act is quite clear on some of these matters, I think we could call the discussion to an end. Does anybody support, not support, or anything else to add? So we're happy to take this forward? Or
You
happy-ish?
asked questions, I don't support it on the terms that I've said.
Correct. Other people in favour of supporting this?
Well, Ian, did you say there was just a wee bit of tweaking to be done?
Yeah.
Yes, but I believe we could emphasise the fact that there's a collaborative approach to be taken, particularly for, I guess, first offenders. First offenders, that's probably the wrong way to describe it. Yes, utilising our best practice enforcement escalation module, words to that effect.
Yeah, because the VADE model is also used by MPI. You're in support. So people are in support with the alterations, the tweaks.
Just ask whether that's better.
So Femke, have you got enough of a steer from that?
Yes, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, go to the next page, 15. Page 16, where the people who do not support are grouped. Page 17, and that's the last feedback on this question.
Oh, I just draw a note to page 1620 from Gretchen Hart, and that enforces what I've said before, that this leaves too much discretion to council workers. There's already laws to deal with. The council does not need to regulate this further.
We can move on.
All right, then the following question is what we asked. I think we've got our feedback on this. The following question that we asked the community was, do you support the proposal to reflect this change in the bylaw's purpose? And the feedback that we received there was that we got 85 responses, 78% is in support, 22% not in support. Reasons in support is that it provides clarity, it aligns the document, and reasons against is that are similar to the previous question, is where it's referencing council overreach or that the existing powers are sufficient. And this feedback is collected on page 18 to 21, starting with the people that are in support of the proposals on page 19. And the people who are not in support grouped on page 20.
And Chair, just think a question around the keeping of bees, because there's a comment there on page 19 from Mary Smack with beehives on a small section. Are there rules around, we've got 12 chooks, are there rules around beehives and where they can be? And obviously there's a nuisance problem there that, but I don't know what our rules are, sorry.
Yes, through the chair, in the bylaw in the draft clause 11 is around beekeeping. It says persons keeping bees or suffering or permitting bees to be kept on their property shall ensure that no nuisance is caused to other persons by those bees. There's a second reference where it says where council considers a hive to be dangerous, offensive or likely to be injurious to people, it may require removal or relocation of such hive. And we've added in the draft the third section which reference a requirement for beehives to be registered. And that's all that's in the bylaw, not bees.
Right, if you would like to carry on.
So on page 20 and 21 is the people that do not support this change.
Councillor Everest?
Sorry, just to get clarity around Councillor Ellis's comment. So nuisance, which I think the definition was physical mental health. I'm allergic to bee stings, and Russell's decided to put bees just over the fence. Where do we draw the line? I mean, that is injurious to my health. But Russell's not doing anything wrong with his beehive on the other side of the fence. Yeah. Which is what I pushed for last time. So I get that. I'm just starting to look at the other side and just listen to the definitions this morning.
Thank you through the chair. So I was just confirming my colleague there about if we had any instances of this. And apparently we've had one case of complaints from Methven, people visiting the cemetery and being stung by bees from local hives. The owners were asked to move the hives. Generally, that's not been an issue in my career. That beekeepers are generally very happy to relocate and move and work with us. In this one particular case, they didn't move the hives, so that's still under a, shall we say, an open case. But we've had no further complaints of it.
My question was really more about the urban setting as opposed to the rural setting, and I guess to me I'd probably cemeteries is a grey line, but at least open spaces. So I just was really looking for clarity around that. That was all.
Thank you. Through the chair, we investigate and we would try and find an answer with the beekeepers to move and relocate, and normally they're open to doing that.
Councillor Wilson?
I would go back to the words reasonable precautions. If you've got bees and it's you've taken reasonable precautions to hold them in, that to me, it's the same as the stock reform I'm talking about. If you want to have a nuisance, if those bees were 2 kilometres away, I could still say, well, I'm getting stung by those bees, therefore it's a nuisance. Whereas if I've taken reasonable precautions with bees, you can't fence them in, so as long as you're being reasonable, that's where I think we've got no, there's no rights of the person doing it. They're deemed to be a nuisance, and then they've got to basically plead why they're not a nuisance. Whereas there needs to be some rights for people, and that's where I say reasonable precautions of livestock and bees, all those sort of things. That is a level of that you can hit, and that's not up to the council to decide. That's sort of common law sort of stuff.
Councillor Cameron?
I think I mean, as Richard said, bees travel, I think, up to 2 kilometres or even further every day to do their thing. But I think if you were a neighbour and your child or yourself had a severe allergic reaction to bee stings and the neighbour didn't move their beehives, well, that's pretty disgraceful, to be honest, I would have thought. If you've got a family next door and they have severe... Yeah, you can. Yeah, but I think if someone went to speak to them, people would be reasonable.
Just through the chair, one further point to raise is it also talks about persons suffering or permitting bees to be kept on their property. So the other situation is somebody has a wild hive that occupies their land that is uncontrolled, which would be potentially a real nuisance. So that's the other thing. There's one thing which is a controlled beekeeping operation, and the second one is where they've effectively just got a nuisance that's arrived and they're not taking any action about it. So that's the other side of the equation as well, which could occur.
Councillor Everest.
Yeah, I think that's good clarity. Thank you. I guess, I mean, it's unfortunate we didn't ask the question of Roger when he was here, but I think there is actually more apiarists in town than there are in the country by quite a long shot. They don't have as many hives, but it is a growing issue that we need to think about and just be aware of. So I mean, wilds, Ed, to your point, you know, definitely something we want destroyed for other reasons, disease as much as anything. But it's just it's an ongoing trend, and I know it was a big trend during COVID to have the odd hive sitting in the back, you know, in the back of your property. So just need to, you know, I totally understand that the bees are going to fly where the bees are going to fly, but it's actually how we hold the pen, I guess.
Would it be fair to say that with the bees, like the keeping of other animals, you would still have that sort of a matrix that you work through, just like you know, other species?
Absolutely. In any case, we follow that matrix.
Oh, thank you. Any further discussion? Oh, sorry. I can't. Okay, sorry, Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Yeah, it comes back to the nuisance thing again, but this one doesn't. But is there any national guidelines around this? It's a minefield because Russell moves in next door to me. He's allergic. I've had bees for 10 years with no worries. So Russell says, "Can you get rid of your bees?" And I said, "Well, no, I'll move them to the other side of my house." I do that. But then a passing bee stings Russell, not from my hive or anything like that, but my bees are in the gun. It's a bloody nightmare. I just wondered, is there anything nationally, any guidelines or anything that we can fall back on?
Thank you. Through the chair, we're not aware of any national guidelines, but we could look into that. At the end of the day, we're there to see if there is a nuisance that can be established that we can then advise on.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm interested. You've talked about the matrix. Is it, you know, how, as a bee owner or an animal owner or something? How can I, you know, I'm actually being told I should rely on the goodwill of the matrix of the council enforcement. Is that written down, or is that an appendices to it, or how would I get that to understand it? Because it seems to be quite critical.
We can. So there's two, through the chair. There's two things at play here in terms of our enforcement investigations or our compliance investigations. Probably better to talk about it. The first is the model that we've discussed, which is VADE, which is the escalating compliance process, which is the way that I word it is that we start off by, my approach personally is, you might not know that you've done something wrong, but we've become aware of this. Hey, you know, this is causing a problem. We want to work with you to try and resolve it to everyone's satisfaction, and actually find out what's going on. So we've got all the information. The second phase of that is, hey, we've talked to you, and this is assuming somebody isn't particularly responsive, is, hey, we sent you this message, you haven't responded to us. This is actually really important because X, Y, and Z's happening. You need to talk to us because we want to get this resolved. The third phase of it is, look, you still haven't come back to us. You really need to, because if you don't, we're going to have to take some action against you to actually force this to be resolved. And then the last one is enforcement, which is, right, you haven't done anything, so we're actually going to have to take, you know, to get the big stick out and actually start to take formal action against you. So that's the escalating enforcement process that we use. And of course, the last stage of that requires all those first stages to have been established, because if we're going to take any formal action, anyone that's looking at it is going to see whether the council's been reasonable and fair in terms of dealing with this person beforehand. The second part of it, the matrix, is a technical tool, which is a 3 or 4 page document, which is where we find something and we work out what the degree of harm or problem it is. And it has all sorts of criteria in it. It has what the actual effects on anybody else are, whether the person's done something deliberately, whether they've done it to make money, whether we've talked to them before or told them that they can't do it, whether or not there's what the level of damage that's been done is, all of those sort of things, the potential harm, the actual harm. So it's a technical tool that actually works out what action we should take when we first become aware of something. Most times, or a number of times, it'll actually be really, really low. It's actually not that much of an issue, but occasionally we'll find something where actually this is really, really serious. We've talked to the person before, they've got previous history with us, we've told them a bunch of times not to do something, they've just gone ahead and done it. We know they're doing it to make money, so they're doing it fully conscious of what their decision is, and they're actually doing it because it's commercially advantageous for them to ignore the rules, and it's causing other people harm, actual harm. So that's where it would score really highly on the matrix. So it's a technical tool. We've got no problem with sending copies around to the council to show what it is and how we use it. But that's the matrix. That's how.
Yeah, I probably understand that, but what I'm getting at is that 14.2 reads, if in the opinion of council, and that's it. That is the rule. It's not, there's no reasonable precautions, it's in the opinion of council. So once it goes to the principle of it. If you're deemed by council to be a nuisance, and that can be a massively high threshold. It could be a very low threshold. It could be, I've said I saw a cow on the road outside Phil Everest's place. Therefore, you are deemed to be a nuisance. You're in the system then. You didn't have any natural precautionary measures to say, well, I didn't have any cows on the road, I didn't think. Fences are all good. And that's what concerns me. We're instantly going to the complainer has put you in the nuisance without you having any way of saying, well, you've shown the fences are fine, everything's good. That's what concerns me.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a point from our perspective. With cases where we take enforcement action, we have to show that we've taken everything into account. And if this case goes to court, there's a greater requirement on us to prove our case. The district courts are very much directing that, as Ian's mentioned about the VADE, that we show that we've adopted that approach ourselves. So we're not just going out and saying, okay, I'm not happy with that, here's an enforcement notice, or we'll see you in court. It's now going through that whole process so we can show that we've used flexibility where we can, because the courts will want to know what levels of action we've taken and what we're able to apply, and did we apply it in a fair and reasonable manner. If we can't show that, case is thrown out and we're in dispute.
Is it worth considering, as an appendices, putting the VADE matrix in? I don't know whether it's worth considering or not. Not the other full phase 2 part, but even just so people get an understanding of what that very first bit looks like. Councillor Wilson.
It's under 14.2. So if the opinion of council, someone's animals become a nuisance, council or authorised officers may, by notice in writing, require the owner to reduce numbers, change fencing, do all that sort of stuff. That doesn't mention the court. That's just internally a council officer could say, my cows are out, you need to drop your cow numbers 100 because I think you've got too many. I know it's an extreme case, and you've got a refence with, we expect 9 wire posts and batting around your whole farm is reasonable. And that's, some people's eyes, it's not unreasonable.
I think through the chair, just one further point I'd make about that. I've been sitting here thinking about this that hasn't actually been said, is that we're speaking about reasonable. The big question that I always ask myself, and right throughout my career I've always asked myself, is what would a reasonable person expect to happen in this situation, and what would a reasonable person expect to happen next door to them, and what would a reasonable person expect to happen if it's something like for example, a barking dog. A dog that sees something or hears something will bark, and you could probably expect it to bark for 30 seconds before the owner gets out there, or a minute before the owner gets out there and calls it in and tells it to be quiet. If the dog's barking for 2 or 3 hours, then that's clearly unreasonable, and it's not what somebody should expect. So every time, as Rex sort of talked about, what we're doing for assessing these things, we're looking at an evidence baseline about what is reasonable, because we know that the person that's complained or will have a perspective about what's reasonable. We also know that the person who we're going to be talking to about the complaint will have an expectation of what's reasonable. And to both those parties, we have a duty of being able to defend our position, because all of those parties will have the opportunity to challenge in various ways the action that we take, either in public or in the media or through the court process. So every time that we make a decision to do something or not do something, that is the approach that's weighed up. There are no knee-jerk reactions.
Right, I think being no further discussion, are people happy to move on from this? Yes, no? Some nodding. Right, carry on, Femke.
Yes, through the chair, we had originally lunch scheduled in 10 minutes. Or we can either go to the next question, or I'm just looking, which is the cat. The cat question.
It's not going to be a 10-minute question, is it, folks? No. So,
I'm not sure if...
as I say, is there something? It's live streaming. I was just wondering if the next one's fractionally shorter. It's all just cats, isn't it? Unless we just deal with the very first question of cats.
Could we inform the listening public that we'll be back at 10 to 1 to start this section, and then we can just tear into it? Is that...
It depends on, I suppose, if lunch is also not far away.
It's there.
Okay. Do we want to... Can we stop the live stream and say we'll come back? Okay. Okay, so if we stop the live stream now, and we will be back at 12:50 for all those who are streaming in. So we'll see you then. Thank you. live, everybody. So we will now start again with Femke and Kat. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so the next topic that we consulted the community on was key change number 2, and the proposal to add rules on responsible cat ownership to the bylaw. So what was proposed was a new clause with the rules on the keeping of cats, and that included the requirement to microchip and register your cat at the New Zealand Companion Animal Registry from 4 months, as well as to have them desexed. And another rule that was proposed was against the feeding of cats other than your own, and there's some conditions mentioned in that around the feeding of cats. Why it was done? It was there's a variety of reasons. It's linked from a community request, and it referenced the protection of biodiversity and wildlife. It's there to help to manage the cat population. It's linked to animal and human welfare. It's there to help and protect the companion cat. So those are some of the reasons why this was proposed. So the community responded to this. I'll just move to the next slide. The question that we asked is, do you support the rules on keeping of cats? And submitters could respond to that. So we received 108 responses, with 67% in support, 13% partially supporting, of which some submitters indicated they wanted to have more rules and some wanted to have only part of the rules, and 20% saying they were not in support. So this feedback is collected from on page 22 to 59, and there's different reasons given. These are just the main ones for support of the new regulation. It's about responsible cat ownership. It reduces stray and feral cats in our community, it protects biodiversity, it reduces cat nuisance, it helps actually with better cat welfare, and some comments made that the rules should go even further. And then there's people that responded that they are not in favor of the new proposed section, and they are saying it should be a cat owner's choice, not council. They're concerned about the costs for cat owners. They say it won't actually change behavior, or even specific details around their concerns about the age of that we're requiring the cats to be desexed, or they're asking for exemptions on rural cats for these rules, and for some more clarification on the feeding of stray cats. So all of this is collected in the summary document, and we'll start on page 22. That's where you have an overview of the statistics, and then on page 23 just shows all the topics in the different how the feedback is themed, and from page 24 on there is the feedback from the people in support of the rules on keeping of cats. And I'll just go through all the pages and
May I ask a question, please? Thanks, Femke. We heard today from the SPCA, and they said there's about 96% of cats are already microchipped and desexed. Do you know what can you look on the registry? You know how it's a registry that works at, determines that 96% are desexed. How many are proportionally, for our best estimate, how many are desexed in the Ashburton district?
I would not know by heart through the chair, so we could ask. I think it's specific. We would have to ask them for the details to provide that.
Presumably they'll have a map because they need to know where people are, and they'd be able to say, well, we anticipate in Ashburton you'd have, 10,000 cats or whatever it is.
So the percentage that they gave, is a national. Yeah.
Yeah, it's national, but it would be.
I wonder if I could ask my colleagues at the other end of the table about because the cats would be recorded in the most complete register would be the companion animal register, and whether or not that actually includes the desexing component. Do you know whether the registration forms on?
Thank you, through the chair. Cats is not something we're involved as to the same degree as dogs, so we wouldn't have that information to hand.
So, just to clarify, the registration for cats and dogs is separate, as Rick said. We have the National Dog Register in our own records, but cats use this National Animal Companion Register, I believe, which is administered primarily through vets. It's incumbent upon the vet and the owner to actually keep that updated. So it's correct. We don't have as much involvement directly. My question to my colleagues was really whether you know through looking at it whether the desexing status of an animal is actually even recorded on that register.
Thank you again, through the chair. We don't have full access to that companion register. We'd have to go through the vets to find that out.
We'll go to page 25. 26. 27. 28. 29.
'Councillor Gilkerson.
Do we want to discuss cat limits? Is now the time, or given it's in the forest and bird presentation and it's here in terms of do we think that we want to do that?
There's a specific section on the number of cats, which we'll get to a bit further down. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, carry on.
31. So yeah, I'll reference the section. So we were in the biodiversity theme group. We've passed definitions. We're now in desexing and microchipping.
Sorry, can I go back to definitions?
Yes.
I think the definitions of feral cat, stray cat, and companion or house cat could be better defined in the policy. Because I think when I read through it, it only has feral animal as a definition.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, that we made that definition in the consultation document, but not in the actual bylaw, so we're happy to add that to the bylaw.
Councillor Wilson.
Furthermore to that, it's down further, but while we're in the same place, rural cat versus an urban environment, because the numbers in the area and all that all feeds in together. If in an urban environment, cats are companion animals, or they're strays or feral, effectively, whereas in a rural environment, that line is blurred, and the companion animal is looked after well, but the feral and that are a pest, and so they're covered under the pest strategy, so they actually fall into a different place. And so the microchipping of them, is not it's a different scenario, different environment. So I was wondering if there can be a differentiation between the rural and the urban environment.
Through the chair, I know the definitions that are recommended are the ones that are used nationwide. So I think changing that that comes with some implications. Says Christian, sorry, did you want to talk to that?
Yeah, through the chair. The definition that we adopted were based on a national standard, which has been used in Animal Welfare Act and National Animal Companion Register regulations, and also used by SPCA. So if we go to use different definitions, we may have to come up with a reason to substantiate the meaning of what we are trying to use. So we decided to make it to be uniform with other council bylaws.
Do you want to carry on?
The next topic is desexing and microchipping. Enforcement.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. On page 33, Stuart Stratton's, the proposed voluntary approach is unlikely to be very successful. Can we discuss that?
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
well, we discussed around the table at lunchtime whether or not it's a bylaw or a policy. Is it an advertising campaign? What exactly are we doing?
As with all through the chair, as with all bylaws, when they come through to fruition and rubber stamped, we would then go out fully with the comms and education approach.
So I mean, at the draft stage, you decided you wanted a bylaw, and you decided at that point that you didn't want it to be enforceable, as it were. But because it's a bylaw, I mean, it is still legally enforceable. That's the whole point of a bylaw. So a policy doesn't have that same sort of teeth, obviously. It's just setting a direction. Obviously, it's in your hands as to where you want to go with it, but it comes back to how seriously you want to take cat control, or however you want to put that.
Sorry, maybe just to add to that. So when we had the workshop in March, maybe you remember that there was a scale of options that you can do. So and what is done nationwide. So if you can do in options of doing nothing, that some councils choose to go rather for an educational approach, and then they actually have an educational leaflet or online or a campaign, and the other end is the bylaw. So policy is not. It's not commonly used because there won't be a lot of difference between a proper educational campaign or, in that sense, with the policy. So that's quite an exceptional choice to go for. So I think we at that time discussed an educational campaign or a bylaw to be the options, the most common options.
Councillor Moffat.
So back to the bylaw and whether it can be enforced or not. So if someone's cat came onto my place and was hanging around and it was annoying and my dog kept chasing it and stuff like that, and I ring the council and go, there's a cat at my place, what would then happen?
Thank you. Through the bylaw, from our perspective, there's a lot in this that's information and education. So any complaints would be investigated as a bylaw, as a customer complaint, and then bringing their attention to what's in the bylaw. But from in the majority, an education perspective.
Councillor Gilkison.
I'm just, recollecting from the session that we had earlier, and personally I think a bylaw is the right option, because if I think back to those conversations, it was around if we do need to enforce, it gives legs. Essentially, it gives you something to stand on so that you can actually say, well, look, actually, these are the rules. But I think the approach that we're taking is education and discretion, especially in the early days. Also, it hasn't been reviewed for 10 years, but we're going to 5, aren't we? Is that part of the consultation, or is that something else? Or is it still 10?
I think its standard is 10, yes, yeah, for a bylaw, but that's something you can always request for an earlier review.
So I guess also if we wanted to change how we're resourcing it, it's easier to add that resource in if we wanted to, if it's a bylaw already. Does that sound like I'm understanding?
I mean, while it's a 10-year review program, you always have the ability to do that earlier if something comes up, or there's a change in the community in terms of how important they think an issue is. So it comes back in front of council, so there's no limitation on that. It's just working it into the program.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't hear you very well. So back to my example, cat comes in, I ring the council comes along, presumably the council will have the microchip thing that can detect whether it's got a microchip or not and check whether it is neutered or not. If it's not microchipped and not neutered, then what happens? And what happens if it is my neighbour's cat? Do you go to the neighbour and fine the neighbour? Do you tell the neighbour, you enforce them to get it microchipped? I'm trying to work out what can actually happen.
Through the chair, this will be the subject of a lot of conversations between our staff, our contractors, what's being expected of them in such situations. I don't know off the top of my head if the scanners that they have for dog chips would work for cat chips. I don't know if there's a difference with the technology, but all these are things that we'd have to look into. And it comes down to the then what? If we're looking at, are we being required to pick up cats? Is that what we're being asked of? All of these are questions around the conversation we're having now.
Yeah, I was going to say my comment was going to be that we need to be very careful around how we shape this bylaw, because we can end up making the council in charge of a whole lot of things where it's not its core business, it's not what it does. It makes them the police, so maybe we should have some wording that allows for agencies to be involved and a number of other types of wording that make it a much more workable bylaw.
Yeah. If I can just add, just particularly around the microchips, even regardless of who is doing the checks, it is best practice and it is good for owners to have their animals microchipped, just purely for those identification purposes. If they're being picked up, it will reduce the chances of any mistakes or unfortunate situations happening. So regardless of whether there's a bylaw or not, there is an advocacy dimension to actually having your pet microchipped, particularly if it is a cat that's wandering.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Look, I think we're all looking for those weird one-off blimmin' circumstance things. The best response I've seen so far is an answer to that number 81, Stuart Stratton. This is first step towards promoting more responsible cat ownership around our district. That's all we're trying to do here. We're not going out there to wave a big stick or send staff out there with a firearm to dispose of these. This is a first step in educating people on good cat stewardship. It will progress over time, but this is just us taking a step towards that. There will always be some weird and wonderful circumstance that no one will quite know how to deal with, but let's not go looking for them. We're putting problems in there that we don't even know exist yet. So let's just treat this for what it is, and it's a step forward in our cat management program.
Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, I agree, Russell, what you're saying, but if we do make the step of making it a bylaw, then if we do have one of those circumstances on our property, or we would expect some action of some sort. So my concern is, how much is this bylaw going to cost council? Because the way I see it, we don't have any cat control officers in our staff. We don't have contractors doing it at the moment. So it's going to cost us money. We have our dog bylaws in place that's backing up what the national government has with their Dog Control Act. Our national government doesn't have any Cat Control Act. It has an Animal Welfare Act, but it is leaving cats up to councils, from what I understand. I mean, I would have thought if the government's not prepared to do something, why are we hopping on board? Look, if other councils want to do that, that's good for them. But I still hark back also to the SPCA lady saying we've got 96% of cats getting desexed, and I thought that number was awesome. And I like the idea that somebody can buy themselves a moggy from a cat rescue place, and if that number turns into 98 or 99%, then probably we're only going to have specific breed cats that you can buy thousands of dollars, and the good old moggy will be, so to speak. So yeah, I'm worried about what this bylaw will do cost-wise and expectation-wise, and whether it's overreach for us and it's not our core.
Councillor Moffat.
I totally agree. It's a first step, and in itself, it's an educational step, and it's the public getting their heads around a new way of looking at cats. So that's not going to change overnight. But what Councillor Hooper just touched on, there will be a public expectation. I think if you have a bylaw, there will be a certain amount of public expectation around that they would expect some sort of action. So that's the thing that I'm a little bit concerned about. Yeah.
Councillor Cameron.
I've just Googled because how many bylaws there are with regards to cats in New Zealand, and it's come up with about 15 New Zealand councils, and it says about. Do we know? Those bylaws, are we reflecting their practices as well in the other 15 councils? Are they looking more towards education, or are they looking at enforcement?
Thank you, through the chair. I can speak for the Canterbury Regulatory Group that I'm a member of, and several of those have a bylaw in place, but unenforceable. So they use it as a means to refer to.
As an aspirational direction, sort of. Yeah. And may I ask a question for Mark, please? We consulted on a bylaw, and I recall the meeting earlier on in the year. We discussed bylaws and policies, and we did that pre-engagement document, which is a huge investment from the community, where we got all the feedback early about dogs and all sorts of things. What does it matter? Can we change from a bylaw to a policy if we've consulted on a bylaw? Or do we need to go out and reconsult? Because that would seem a significant change in reason to me.
Possibly, I'd have to think about that. But I mean, it is a change in the sort of approach you want to take. And I mean, if you recall, this originally came out of the biodiversity group and investigations that they wanted to sort of look at around cat management in the district. So it's grown from there in terms of where the
and when we look at the feedback, a significant proportion through the chair have supported the bylaw as it stands. I think it was over 70%. Am I correct on that? I can go back
on
and
the
have
cats, you mean? Yeah.
Yes,
so
with regards to cats.
The numbers are on the board there.
Yeah, 67%. And if we're going to have a softly or an educational approach to implementation of the bylaw, I'm assuming that doesn't really differ very much from the implementation of a policy. And I think, to Russell's point, I think we're getting hung up on the semantics of it without really looking at why we are doing it. And we are doing it to improve the management of cats in our district, to reduce the number of feral cats and stray cats if we can, and to put our shoulder to the wheel, if you like, on protecting our biodiversity in our community. I think that's the important message. It's not whether it's a bylaw or a policy and whether we're going to invest money in managing it, which I'm pretty jolly sure we are not, especially at this stage. Whether in 20 years' time we're a unitary, perhaps something may change, but at the moment there's no money for that. We haven't put anything aside in the long-term plan. So I think we have to be aware of why we went ahead and looked at that. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
I'm under the assumption that we're doing a bylaw because that's where we're at. Just with respect to, sorry to go back again, but once we've put in there about the things we want cats to do with microchip and all that, and all cats are deemed equal across the whole district. So that's where I think we should have a nuance in 15 that says, if I've got it right, take precautions, it says, shall take precautions to prevent the animals. And when it says, it goes to Councillor Moffat's thing, if taking precautions to keep an animal in your property means you should have them inside locked up. But cats at the moment, that's not a reasonable way of doing it. Cats nationwide in some urban environments, I think Methven will probably move to the point where you should have them contained within your house because of the bird song. Whereas if I look at in rural hinds, we don't think they need to be locked in because we're trying to kill the starlings that are crapping on the garden. So that's where I think of having a nuanced approach to the outcome would differentiate between urban and rural, and it may give staff the opportunity to say in an urban environment they treat them differently, especially in Methven with the birdsong initiative next to the bird park. I would have thought has a different view of it as to in rural hinds in a rural environment.
But just my point, it could be as subtle as the changing from a word from shall to may, which softens it, but has a similar implication. Any other comments? Do you want to carry on, Femke, or you want more direction?
No, I'm happy to carry on. I think it comes up again a bit later as well, so if we can, just going to see what page. I think we're on page 33 for enforcement, and then that leads us into page 34. People responding about the feeding cats other than your own. Page 35. Page 36 is references about funding or costs. And it starts the section on submissions on the limiting the number of cats.
Councillor Gilkison.
So in the hearings, we heard about the person whose neighbour has 10 cats. At the moment, what would happen if you got called to them, even if this cat maybe hadn't been going into the house and spraying everywhere? But I don't know, how is that dealt with now? Is it, or if you just get a call saying someone's got lots of cats, it's each to their own?
Through the chair, we don't have that level of complaints to deal with, so it's not an issue for us, or it hasn't been an issue for us.
Yeah, because I guess the issue there is actually that the cat was spraying inside, so it's a nuisance. So it should get picked up under nuisance if that's what they were going to complain about, not necessarily the number.
There would be a fine line between us working with SPCA to see about any rehoming capabilities they may have. We've done that before with certain properties, the likes of hoarders and where there's lots of animals as well on the property. So we've dealt with the hoarder health situation, and SPCA have dealt with the cat issue.
Right, so I guess that's where the animal welfare crosses into
Absolutely.
this. Yeah.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Through the chair, we heard this morning in some of the submissions they talk about 3 cats or 2 cats, and I see you've recommended 2 cats. What is the data for those other councils that have cat limits? What is the most common number of cats?
Through the chair, so we are not currently recommending, but if council would want to restrict the number of cats, there is.
Said that. Sorry.
So there's different councils. Some go up as far as say you can not have more than 2 cats, and some councils go to you cannot have more than 5 cats. So I think it's in between that threshold that councils, if they have rules on the number of cats, it's within those numbers.
2 to 5.
Correct.
Councillor Wilson.
So if I look at the policy, the bylaw, sorry, where would you put the numbers of cats in? Would it fall under the numbers of animals under 14, would it? No?
I imagine it would go into the cat section, which is section 12, keeping of cats, and the proposed bylaw. Again, because
I draw the attention that in a rural environment you don't have the choice of how many cats you have, and if you know if you've caught every cat and you've caught your pet moggy and microchipped it, many farm cats, so do you have to count the cat? It doesn't make sense in a rural environment to have numbers on cats, because technically if you have more than your numbers you would fall into no person shall keep or harbour animals in such numbers to cause nuisance to another person. Therefore it could be said that if someone has too many cats on their property, if there's ferals or whatever, they would be breaching the bylaw. So, I'm just concerned that unintended consequences is enormous. It's fine for an urban environment, but as soon as you go into a rural environment, all sorts of things go haywire.
Through the chair, we do references in a lot of the clauses if it's in an urban area or not. So you could specify that if you would like to.
Is there provision for definition of companion cat?
Correct, yeah, which will also determine, yeah.
I know a number of us farmers have companion cats, but we also have the others. Right, Councillor Moffat.
The issue of cost has come up quite a bit in the submissions, particularly for low-income people, and I'm aware of the SPCA's snip and chip, so neutering and microchipping, presumably at a reduced cost or fully subsidised, not quite sure. But I'm wondering, does that actually have to happen at an SPCA centre, or are there participating vets here locally? Because if they have to take the cat to SPCA, that's travel costs, time, those sorts of things.
No, through the chair, our understanding of conversations with SPCAs is that when they do a snip and chip drive, they often they come into town, or they are linked with local veterinarian clinics and they collaborate. So they're not expecting people to travel to them.
Councillor Cameron.
I want to go back to the number of cats, if I may. We heard from Andrea this morning with regards to the rural cats, and they have a job to do and kill the rats and things. But she said that, of course, she has desexed those cats, because they're obviously a companion, they're sort of a working companion cat, if you like. For the rural people, we're not proposing to make them responsible for all their strays or feral cats, are we? This bylaw is only to do with companion animals. Is that correct?
That's
the focus, obviously, but obviously it's around dealing with the other problem cats as a result of that.
Say Richard has 20 cats hiding in the bush at the back of where he lives. He cannot be responsible for those cats that have been put there by somebody. We'd have to, I think, be very clear in the bylaw that we are dealing with companion cats. I mean, the flow on is that by dealing with the companion cats, we are reducing the likelihood of feral or stray cats, but it's not the person that lives in the country's responsibility to look after every cat that's roaming around the district as a feral cat. I wouldn't have thought that would be reasonable.
Councillor, you've kind of asked, through the chair, you've kind of answered my point that this bylaw and the responsibility of this council is to do with companion cats and the prevention of cats becoming stray and then feral. There are other legislative requirements, including the Biosecurity Act, I believe it is, that Environment Canterbury administers, which is to do with pest species. You know, and some would argue, I don't think it is quite yet, but in certain legislation, feral cats are a pest species, predator pre-2050, for example. So yes, so there's separate provisions for those things. I think the important focus for this is the idea that where council can have control is around cats that could potentially become those worse.
That's right.
Species.
So we would hold the rural dweller responsible for the cat that sits by the fire in their kitchen or whatever, but not the one that's roaming around looking for whatever in the middle of the paddock. That's what I understand it. So I think we need to be clear in the bylaw that that is what we're doing.
And the landowner may or may not have other responsibilities under other legislation to control pests, and there may be other resources that they can obtain to assist us.
That's right. And that's outside our scope, you know. But is the cat? So the cat's not listed as a pet. The feral cat's not listed as a pest at the moment.
Through the chair, I believe it's an organism of interest in the regional pest management strategy.
Okay.
So the council may wish to consider engaging with Environment Canterbury about that.
We could submit on that if there came an opportunity.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I would be in favour of using similar language to this that we did around the chooks, residential areas. We limit the number of cats you can keep, and that just covers those urban ones then. What that number is, that's up for serious debate, I would have thought. Me personally, I would say, I'll pull a number out of the air to start the discussion, I would say 3, but you know, in our residential areas, 3 companion cats, unless you're a breeder and have those exclusions and things in there, but yeah.
Through the chair, if you're considering that, would you be considering a grandfather clause? I would think you'd probably have to.
Oh yes, you'd have to. It couldn't happen overnight. There would be a phasing in of that over however long a term, or if someone at the moment has 4 cats, it might be as simple that they have to inform us or something so that we know, you know, but realistically there would be a grandfather clause in there for a period of time.
Councillor Gilkison.
I think at this point I'm not in favour of putting a number on it, because if I look at the bigger picture as our step towards cat management, I think that if we can get people more compliant with desexing and microchipping first, and then look at it, especially hearing that there's not a big problem and that we do have the Welfare Act to rely on, at this stage, I don't think I would support putting in a number, but open to debate.
How many councillors would be interested in putting in an actual number?
I would like to see some evidence around that. I'd like to know what the other councils are doing. I'd like a few more facts around that. I mean, it's sort of difficult, isn't it? Because people love their pets, like, you know, naturally enough. So it's hard to say, well, you only allow 1 cat if you've got 10, for example. And it depends on how they're cared for and looked after, and are they making a nuisance, all those other things. So I wonder if we could set that aside and revisit that at a later time when we have a bit more information. Was it the SPCA representative this morning that said 3? Did they say 3?
I think it was 2 to 5 from.
2 to 5. Okay, yeah. I thought someone said 3. Yeah. Have we discussed the microchipping and things, or are we coming up to that?
It was one of the topics, and we went past it, but we can go back to it. I do have a list of all the councils that have restrictions on the number of cats. 12, 14, 16, 18. It's about 20, over 20, and numbers varying from 2 to 5. So I can send you that list if you would like to see that.
Councillor Moffat.
Just back to the topic of numbers of cats on properties. I've noticed in the submissions, a lot of people are comparing cats and dogs. They're saying, well, if it's like this for a dog, then it should be like this for a cat. I don't know if that is a good comparison or not. It could be, it might not be. So I think I need to understand that a bit more, whether saying you're allowed 2 dogs is the same as saying you're allowed 2 cats. Just a thought.
Councillor Cameron.
May I transgress back to what we discussed? We discussed the spading and the microchipping of the cats. My question is the spading. We've given them, if this bylaw is passed through council and implemented, we've given people till January next year. Do you think that is long? We didn't discuss that, I don't think. Do you think that is long enough to, like, what would be the earliest that this bylaw would be introduced? It would be what, September, October? Doesn't seem very long to get them spayed before January. I think you said January in the...
That's up to council to decide.
I think we do propose January. Have I got, I saw
the transition period was to January 1st.
I thought we were coming to that, but I think that's a bit of a people, and most people want to comply, most people want to do the right thing. So I think compressing the time zone into sort of 3 months is over Christmas, where a lot of vets are probably on holiday, is tricky.
And also the busiest time of year in terms of if they're doing rural work as well. Any suggestions from the floor? Councillor Cameron?
Can I give a suggestion? I'd like to see at least a year to give them time to have their animals spayed. Personally, I think that gives enough time. There's a big rush over Christmas, nothing's going to be done, people go away, so it sort of takes them through next winter and gives time for people to adjust and get used to it and put funds aside. As to Julie's point earlier, I think you referred to the cost of it. It could be up to $200. I don't know what it is locally, but I don't know.
Councillor Moffat?
Yeah, I quite like the idea of a longish time span like that, not only for the funds, but also if the SPCA snip and chip thing, I mean, they won't be here every week, will they? So I don't know how often they come. So it's the sort of thing that might need to be spread out over a reasonable period of time.
Does that work for?
I mean, totally in your hands. I mean, we could say something like a year from the date of adoption or something like that.
Yep. So we just need to quantify start point for the year. Yep. So I agree with that.
Yep.
People in support of that? Yep. Some nodding. So yep. Back to you, Femke. Oh, we did. Sorry, Russell. We didn't land on numbers. I think maybe first and foremost, this is my very personal view, is that we really encourage the desexing and microchipping, and then once people get a grip of that, then we might look to the numbers rather than asking them to make significant changes really quickly. Yeah, because it may, if they've got a number of cats, it may put them off desexing and microchipping if they haven't already got it in place. Potentially, I don't know. That's my personal view. Okay. Do other councillors agree with that? Yes or no?
Yes, I agree.
Right. And show of hands. Sorry, it's not a very good steer for you guys.
Those are close. Sarah,
Okay.
what are we showing hands on, please? This is whether or not there's a deferral of setting a limit at this point, and then reviewing in the future if required. So not setting a limit on the number of cats right now.
Councillor Cameron?
You could have a sinking lid policy on the cat numbers. I don't know how that would go down, but that's
So are we happy to propose?
But I have
Okay,
a question
sorry.
around the desexing. It was strongly supported by the SPCA that we desex at 4 months. Do we all agree with that, of the animals? Some go out to 6 months, I think some of the people said, and some are 4 months. somebody mentioned 8 weeks, didn't they? Did
Well,
yeah.
it's,
Yeah. So do we all agree on the 4-month thing?
Or there, I would say thereabouts. It's pretty hard to go, hey, Moggy, how old are you?
Wasn't it 1 kg as well?
Yeah, there's also, if you're in veterinary practice, there's a weight criteria. If they haven't hit a certain weight in the practices that I worked in, we would not do it. So it's about an age and a weight in veterinary practice. Councillor Moffat.
I think probably the youngest practicable, is that the word? Youngest practicable time, because it depends on when they're ready to breed, doesn't it? So whether it's 4 months, 6 months, it sounds like 4 months is, the best time.
Sorry, that's rather loose, Femke. Yeah.
Well,
So show of hands, maybe for giving it 4 months.
4 or thereabouts. Yeah.
So do you want to,
Yeah, I think, are we fair to say that's generally agreed? Around that 4 month and wait, whichever here, yep. The veterinaries decide that in a way. So, no. It looks like a general agreement.
thank you. I'll go to page 38. I think that's where, yes, that's next category, other, and followed by registration on page 39, as well as the starting of the section on roaming of cats and other nuisances on page 40, 41.
Councillor Wilson.
Probably with respect to roaming, I don't think we want to even try and talk about stopping cats roaming, because it's not reasonable in today's environment to stop cats roaming. To even be considering it is just ridiculous, in a word. So it may be ideal in the perfect world, but to actually talk about it now, we're silly to be even suggesting it in any form anywhere that we control roaming of cats. Because what is it? You can't herd stray cats or something, isn't it?
Councillor Everest.
Just confirmation now, Vet's just texted me back the messages in terms of this companion animal. So thanks to Tony for that. But basically, they can't download that information for what is held in Ashburton for Ashburton cats. We've got to go directly to the register, and her understanding is that it's not necessarily recorded with the desexed or not. But
okay.
She just said check, make sure.
Thank you for that. I'd have to say I agree with Councillor Wilson that, especially in a rural environment, it'll be pretty hard to confine the cat. Any other comments?
Right. Page 42. Referencing the toxoplasmosis. Page 43.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. So I was just going to ask a question. How was that going to be portrayed in the bylaw that roaming cats weren't part of it?
So currently, there's no restriction in the proposed section on restricting the roaming of cats, and there are councils that have that require cats to remain inside within certain times, hours, or always, and that's not currently proposed.
So just don't mention anything, and yep.
I will note it was discussed about toxoplasmosis, but there was no discussion about the cat as the host for Campylobacter, which is equally as bad for any woman who's pregnant or any person who catches it.
The next, so this was the group of the feedback of people who were in support of the new, of the proposed clause. So now we'll move into the pink header, which is the from page 45, the people that partially support this. First, sort of a generic section on page 45. And then page 46, people referencing that the changes don't go far enough. Or another desexing a microchip commentary. Page 48.
I'll just comment on, I agree with the Federated, I think it's Federated Farmers, where it says the district-wide mandate would make Ashburton an outer lighter relative to other councils. And, you know, we need to just take that into consideration going forward.
Page 49. Feeding of cats other than your own, or references to funding and costs.
Councillor Hooper?
So can you just repeat what you just said?
So if you go back into partially support,
Yeah.
in number 58 of the Federated Farmers Dismissal, and it says, under an urban-only approach, it is also consistent with neighbouring practices in Mackenzie District Councils of Keeping Animals, Poultry and Bees Bylaw, applies its provisions to cats to urban areas and only encourages rather than mandates microchipping and desexing.
Through the chair, that's currently not proposed.
No, but I'm just saying, when we talk about that microchipping and making, that we remember that point.
So are we okay with the 12.1, any person keeping or permitting to be kept any cats must always ensure that? Is that not
Yeah,
mandating?
yeah. It's a vague mandate.
Well, it sounds pretty,
It
Yeah.
does, yeah.
must always ensures mandating.
Councillor Everest?
Yeah, just following on from Councillor Hoops. Certainly, I'm reluctant to have different sets of rules around the community. We need to understand what that actually means, which I think is what Councillor Hooper's really putting across. Certainly from a pest control point of view, from a rural setting, cats make good sense, but unfortunately cats in the rural setting also eat native birds, and they don't actually decide that they're only going to eat rats and mice. And so we've probably just got to be very careful how we travel down that road. You know, personally, it's great to have the cats around the sheds from our own point of view. But those cats don't decide whether they want a pee waka waka for lunch or whether they want a rat for lunch.
Councillor Cameron?
Didn't we go out and consult on that, on the desexing and the microchipping of the cats? That's what we consulted on in this bylaw.
Correct.
And was that what we had support for? 67% of people supported that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's right.
Okay. Carrying on. Yeah.
And page 50. Roaming and other suggestions. Page 52. Page 53.
Councillor Wilson?
So 52, that's been answered, that question around bylaw versus thing. So if we come to a full landing on that, you know, because obviously there's a lot of technical jargon, I would say, there and there, and just I'd like to understand that we have actually come to a landing there.
My understanding at this point is that you're happy to remain as a bylaw. You haven't gone down the other track. If I've misinterpreted that, let us know.
Page 53. And then we get into the orange header, which is the people, is the feedback from the submitters who do not support the rules on the keeping of cats. First, their feedback on desexing and microchipping.
Councillor Wilson.
With respect, it's in the with microchipping. Microchipping was put in place not for, it was to, so people, companion cats, so people, if they lost their cat, it could be brought back to them. And so that mechanism's now being used to, and I guess it's, we're microchipping them to get them back to the owner, but more than likely to, if someone destroys a cat, or it is deemed, then if it's not microchipped, it's deemed a pest, therefore it can be dispatched in a humane animal trap. That's what I would understand why we're microchipping them. We're not microchipping them for for registration, because we don't register them. We don't. So I think the reason for microchipping needs to be really spelt out why we're doing it. It's not for any other reason but so that if someone destroys a cat, they can hopefully identify it before it does it through the trap that it's someone's pride and joy cat. And so that's where I would question why we're microchipping them.
Yes, through the chair. So one of the main reasons will be to return the cats as quickly as possible or to the owner. And the other reason, I think, is linked to the fact that some traps have a scan. So if your cat is microchipped, it will not go off.
So probably I understood that the reason for microchipping them was that allowed, if you're a responsible cat owner, you would do it anyway because that's what you'd do to stop them from being destroyed by the animal. And if we mandate it, we're mandating, it's quite a big step to, people who care for their cat would do it anyway. And if you mandate it, you're making everybody who doesn't do it breaching the rules. And so it's a big step effectively from a responsible cat owner to everybody who owns a cat. That's what I'm portraying. Because under here you're breaching the rules if you don't do it. So every single cat has to be done. And we know even with dog licensing, not every single dog is licensed. So we're saying now every cat has to be microchipped, every single one. I just question the reach of that. It's quite a long reach. It's a suggestion, yes, but when it's mandated, no.
I think it's considered as if we, throughout the country, if you talk about responsible cat ownership, this is one of the elements of how that is defined, but that's up to council, obviously.
Councillor Cameron.
This is just sort of a rhetorical question. If you were spending up to $200 to spade your cat, would you not want it microchipped because you love your cat and want to make sure it, if someone finds it, they don't mistake it for a feral cat or a stray cat? Are you upset, Richard, at the idea of being compelled? Is that what the sticking point is? Like, I mean, I have no view on that really, but I think most people would do it anyway if it's $15 forever, which is what we were told this morning.
The $15 is for the registration.
Yeah.
The actual chipping costs more than that.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Got you. I thought it was $15 for the whole thing.
I understood the council's not concerned about people getting their cat back if it gets lost. They're concerned about the cat turning feral. If my cat decides that Russell's a better cat owner and goes and lives at his place, that's not the council's concern at all. But if that cat decides it wants to go and become a stray, that the council would then, well, it doesn't want that to happen. But I don't know whether microchipping is going to make any difference to that. If it decides to be a stray, it's going to be a stray. It's only the point of dispatch, you could say, that microchip might save that cat. But if, so I'm just saying that the reasoning behind making it compulsory is, I'm questioning why would you make it compulsory? You could have a responsible cat owner would. That's what we're almost saying. We're trying to tell the public what a responsible cat owner would do. But by going to a bylaw, we're actually saying that is the law you have to do, which is, to me, is quite a big step.
Councillor Hooper.
I wondered if Councillor Everest could put his catchment hat on for a second and tell us how many traps down sort of riverbeds and things have microchip readers, or no, Christian?
Through the chair, I'll start from responding to Richard Wilson before I come to you, if that's okay. I think the main reason why microchipping was introduced was to be able to return cats to their owners when they are caught in a live trap. And mind you that feral cat and stray cat population are abundant in Ashburton River Channel, and that is not far from residential homes. And there's an active pest trapping going on currently, including by the Environmental Canterbury, even around Lake Hood, which is within their jurisdiction on biosecurity and controlling toxoplasmosis. And the question now is, how do we protect companion cats from being killed on those river margins? Rekaya, Foothills, and Ashburton, and Hines, and Co. Now, no cat stays at home as long as it can have access to the outdoors, and they can wander up to 3 to 4 kilometers. And the distance of 4 kilometers from the Ashburton River to town is closer to Toyota Auto Shop store. And if those cats leave their homes around Netabi and Hampstead or Tinward, Arlington, and wanders down to the river, how do we protect them from being killed in those traps? So that is where microchipping comes in. Now, we haven't been able to allow any group to install live kill traps for cats, even around Medvern. The reason is because we don't have control over protecting companion cats yet. So the essence of this is, if we go and adopt the bylaw and give the residents 1 year to microchip their cats, then after that 1 year, those trapping groups can then install live traps, or the one that has microchip reader. But we can't stop other councils like Environmental Canterbury and DOC installing from using live trap, because that is their legal and statutory responsibility to control under Biosecurity Act. So currently, we don't have any figure of who is using little traps along the Ashburton River, and the request that has come to Biodiversity Unit, we discouraged it and told them to wait until we get this down the track before they can use it. And the same thing happened around Medvern. Even the Medvern group were giving some auto traps with microchip reader, but they haven't installed it, pending until when everybody must have microchip their cats, then they can install it.
And Christian, as a follow-up, because I think you've probably got the numbers in your head, but there was going to be free microchipping of those cats at Methven, and the response was pretty poor, as I recall it.
Through the chair, yes, there has been some conversation with the local vets, which agreed to subsidize the cost. And I have been having a private chat here and on aspect of protect biodiversity, which is one of the reasons in support of this. And I also think it's something biodiversity grant can support, especially for low-income earners or those with community service cards. Yeah, I think those grants can also subsidize the microchipping and the sexing, because the main aim is to protect biodiversity. So it falls within the grant criteria for biodiversity grants. Yes. And SPCA also told us that they can run another snip and chip campaign once that is adopted to support the community in getting along with the bylaw.
Thank you. Any further comment on that? Do we need more direction? Okay.
Page 55. Oh, sorry.
Could I make? I understand Christian has explained it very well, and I probably exactly what Christian said. The reason for it is probably people could read this and see the reason for it is a regulatory reason. It's not a regulatory reason; it's more a practical reason, and that practical reason is to stop pets being dispatched or can be returned. So I think that probably hasn't been highlighted enough, and whether it can be highlighted somehow, just so that people do understand the reasoning better. The reasoning is more practical than bureaucratic almost.
Yeah, I mean, we potentially could include like an advisory note or something like that in there. I mean, there's no ability to register cats. There's no legal undertaking or legislation that can enable that. And there's no intention of this bylaw doing anything like that.
page, I'm moving, sorry, next page. 55, enforcement. 56, feeding of cats other than your own and funding and costs. 57, number of cats, overreach council control. 58. And 59, registration. And that's the last feedback on the cat question.
Councillor Iris.
We've still been silent on this issue that's been raised all morning in terms of rural-urban cats. What's happened there? What's the recommendation?
I think what I heard was that yeah, it applies to everyone, but it applies to what's effectively companion cats and companion cats in either rural or urban areas.
Would you like to elaborate, Councillor Iris?
I'm not sure that you could call a yard or a shed cat a companion cat, and I guess that's what we're trying to look at. The pest control part of the rural cat, if you like, against it's non-selective taking of other species which you're trying to protect in town, and I guess that's the conundrum we're dealing with.
Through the chair, may I ask a question of the councillor, or rural councillors perhaps? Call them yard cats. Would you see them as falling into a separate category from companion, stray and feral?
It's a good question. They are often fed in part, but they don't come into your house, would probably be the definition I would give you.
And could they be fixed?
That's a very good question. I would say generally not friendly enough to be fixed. I mean, you'd have to trap them, sorry, Ian, and you answer your question.
So yes, with your indulgence, but I guess the question is, if the purpose of this bylaw is to control the uncontrolled spread of cats, and so the primary intention is through the neutering and fixing and prevent unwanted pregnancies, is there a way that you can think that would be able to be done while still allowing these semi-wild cats, for want of a better word, to actually exist in a farm environment?
Look, I totally get your line of questioning, and I'm supporting where you're coming from. We would have to ask some good questions. Yes, they could be trapped. That's the short answer. You'd need good leather gloves to get them out of the trap. Good luck to the vet that's going to put them to sleep. But seriously, I do think we've got to have. I'm rural based, but I think we've got to have a degree of consistency here, and that's my concern.
Councillor Gilkison.
My questions were along the same lines as Ian, and my question now is, what are the names of your shed cats? And I guess my point to that is, in my mind, they would fall under the definition of stray. You're not housing them. You might feed them every now and then, but you're not going to spay them. But I think if it got out of control, you would take action as a farmer, because you would know that it's having a negative impact on your surroundings. So I think that's maybe the difference with rural, in my mind.
Councillor Moffat.
I just thought of a word. I think domesticated might work. Look, the way a sheep or a cow's domesticated. They're not living in your house with you. They're not a companion, but they are a domestic animal, aren't they? So, are they? So maybe those sorts of cats are domesticated, if not companion.
Councillor Wilson.
It goes to, I agree, you can't differentiate between rural cats because it becomes too hard. But my feeling is that the bylaw it's quite strict, it's black and white. They have to be microchipped. It's not the reasoning doesn't come into it, they have to be. And it doesn't matter what the reasoning is, they have to be. And that's perhaps the problem. We're saying that every single cat has to be microchipped. And that's, otherwise you breach the bylaw. And there's the penalty, I'm trying to understand what the penalty is. If you breach a bylaw, you breach a bylaw, don't you? And we're saying we're not going to enforce it, but you're still breaking the law. I'd like some clarification on that.
Looking at me, okay. And theoretically, yes. But like you say, the intent is not to enforce it. It's to be educational, and I guess it's a journey from council's point of view as to responsible cat ownership, as you've talked about earlier, and it'll move forward over time.
Does it come back to the definition? So if I look at the bylaw, any person keeping or permitting to keep any cat, but should it be companion cat? And then moving down, where no person must intentionally feed a cat other than the cat they own. I guess you can't say, other than the companion cat they own. Does that change things? Does that clarify things?
Councillor Wilson.
I would say it's 12.1. Everything after that is what we want people to do. The first one is any person keeping or permitted to keep any cat must always ensure that. That's very black and white. There's no give or take, and if we're not going to enforce it, whether we should be looking to soften that first line, because all the other lines make perfect sense. And as Christian alluded, the reason we're doing 4 is to save people from good cats being killed. But I'd be interested to understand if the wording is so strong that it puts council in an impossible position. I say Christians.
Mr. Chair, first and foremost, according to SPA website, which I'm looking at now, any stray cat lives near or sometimes among human population, but are not considered own. Some may be friendly with people, while others are not. They can rely on people to some extent to meet their needs. For example, a stray cat may be known to a person or neighborhood, and while not actively owned by anyone, be fed by the community. So categorically, I will say that those farm cats not owned by the farmer are stray cats, as long as they live within the farm area and are being fed by them, but they don't come into the house and they are not known to them as their cats. So I will regard them as stray cats based on the standard national definitions adopted by SPCA and Animal Welfare Act. Then, can those cats be killed if they're not microchipped? The answer is yes. If I put a sardine on a trap, they'll go in to eat it because they still depend on hunting and looking for food to meet their most basic needs other than being fed by the owner. So there's also a possibility that those cats will be killed through Predator 350 or through Biosecurity Act cat killing or whatever, whether it's microchipped or not. But if they're microchipped, they can be saved when you scan them or when they get close to the traps.
Okay. Are we any further ahead? Councillor Wilson.
Could we change the terminology in keeping of cats, instead of saying must always ensure, should where practicable something like that, put in that, because that would give the out for if it's a farm cat that's going to be out, but it does mean we're practical you would deem that if it's a companion cat that would be practicable and logical. I'm just saying to soften that just a little bit, that it does allow us to maintain the reason for it, but it doesn't put us in a position where we're legally having to enforce it.
Again, I mean, that's in your hands. I'm not sure the legalities around the bylaws from the perspective of whether that would have any impact. We'd have to get some advice around that probably.
Councillor Gilkison, sorry.
Yeah, I don't support the softening of it, because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is just put forward best practice of what cat management can look like. But what I do support is just clarifying the terms and making sure that people understand when it's a companion cat and when it's not.
Yeah, because for me, under the definition of it being a stray, that's not actually keeping the cat as such, because it's not a companion. It's sort of semi-attached to you rather than being kept. Yeah, it depends on what definition you want to give to that cat, that rural cat. Councillor Hooper.
Yeah, I think for the bylaw to have any teeth, you've got to have, must always ensure that. But whether or not it needs to be, as I think Deb suggested, any companion it needs to slip in there. I think the likes of the barn cats, I dare say they probably are right up there as far as biodiversity wreckers go. So, look, if it's doing a great job around your yard, and hopefully it's not going to head down the river for a hunt as well, but I mean, if it does, bad luck. Because as you say, trying to microchip it or spade it, so maybe it's just to keep the teeth in the bylaw, it just has to have companion cat there, and you still retain the words must always ensure that.
So are people happy to have the inclusion of the word companion cat? Some nods or some...
Well, can I just ask that if they think that'll work all right? I mean...
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So I think what we're saying is in 12.1 would include the word companion cat before every cat in there, but 12.2 would stay the same because that's sort of dealing with the other sorts of cats. So in terms of what a definition of a companion cat is, it's a common domestic cat that lives with humans as a companion and is dependent upon humans for its welfare.
Yep.
That's the definition we're currently using.
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Oddly enough, I don't agree with it, even though it's my idea, because I don't agree with the bylaw.
Yeah.
I think we should be ongoing advertising. Policy maybe, but ongoing advertising is, so I don't agree with the bylaw. So I just wanted to say that although that's a fantastic idea, I don't agree with it.
Right, have you got...
All right, then we get to the last, or the next, I think we've got all council direction on the cats. The next question that we asked the community was on other changes, and there was a sort of a list of more administrative changes made for clarity and consistency. There was an overview of those changes in the consultation document and online, and this was the community's feedback on those changes. So we got 77 responses to that. In support, people saying it's sensible and practical, against people referencing the poultry limit that we've discussed, and some of the other topics that we've seen, like the overreach of council control. And that's on page 60 to 64. So I'll start on page 61, where we have the first feedback. Again, around definitions, some other grouped as other feedback, or page 62, roaming.
Just on page 62, Madam Chair, roosters in urban areas. I mean, when it comes to poultry and nuisance, would roosters be one of your main complaints you get around poultry with the nuisance of them?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, from a noise perspective.
So, should we just deal with? I mean, I personally am surprised we're allowed roosters in an urban area. We're getting tough on all sorts of things, and yet you can have a rooster that can start crowing at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you can go out there and tell it to shut up as many times as you like, but that doesn't work. So I don't know if anyone else is along those lines of maybe we should change that. But.
Councillor Everest.
I can't agree with Councillor Ellis. Has he never seen a rooster with no tonsils? Yeah, absolutely, I agree with Russell. I think it's something we've got to address.
Having learnt a little bit about this over the years, I do understand that there are various things that can be done to allow or to prevent roosters from crowing, and to things like putting them in dark environments and hoods and all sorts of other things that you can do to maybe I'm no expert, put it that way, but there are certain controls that you can put in just to effectively simulate darkness for them. That's what the intention is. So, and then also in certain areas there are situations where you can have an environment which has yet to be developed, where it is low density, where perhaps in the future it might be inappropriate, but for now it's actually not causing any sort of a nuisance. The thought that was taken here was the fact that because there are situations that are where it's possible, having an absolute arbitrary black and white position where roosters will not be allowed was somewhat overly restrictive. And to allow that discretion to say, well, look, we're not going to outright ban them, but we will have those controls. If we get complaints and we investigate and there is a problem, then yes, we will take the action that's required. I don't know whether colleagues want to say anything more about it.
Councillor Hooper.
Was it in the bylaw at some stage? I've bred the odd chook here and there. Whenever they started crying, I thought, oh, geez, I've got to get rid of that. I thought it was just a given. And next question is it a complaint that you guys come across quite a bit? Are there many roosters in town?
Thank you, through the chair. For the first part, I understand the bylaw has been slightly amended to just being noisy birds.
Okay.
As in not differentiating between poultry and roosters and so on, and noisy bird.
So it was roosters at one stage, you think? No.
Was it not? I think
No,
previous bylaw perhaps.
No, through the chair. It says, it initially said, previously said noise from animals, birds or poultry, but noise is already part of the nuisance definition, so we kept it under.
It was a previous bylaw.
Yeah, so it is dealt with, it can deal with under the nuisance.
In terms of noise nuisance, we haven't had too many complaints, just a handful. But Ian's point about the coaxing them into thinking it's still night time does work. It's just you got to stick with that practice, and that's keeping them in the huts, darkened hoods and the like. It has been trialled and worked.
Sounds like a nice life for them.
Right, you can carry on.
I'll move on. Thank you, Madam Chair, to page 63. Feedback of people who do not support the changes. Page 64. And then if you're happy for me to move on to the next and last question, that's the final question that we ask in community in all consultations, if they have any other comments. And this is the feedback that we received there. So there was some references to, I'll start on page 65, around bees. Around the funding and costs. On page 66, around the horses and council control. Page 67, other. Page 68. Page 69. Page 70. Page 71. Page 72.
Councillor Ebris.
73. 74. 75. More comments on roaming. Page 76. '77. '78. Some comments around trapping. And last page, 79. And page 80 just collects all the comments around dogs, which is not dealt through this bylaw, but which you will be discussing next.
Any further comments or anything else to add, councillors?
All right, so we've now gone through all the feedback that we received. I think we've got council direction on some changes to the bylaw. So the next steps will be that we'll update the draft accordingly, and we'll bring it back to you to the 23rd of September, or that's the scheduled now, council meeting with a report for adoption after, which we will advise everyone of the outcome.
Cool, thank you.
Okay.
We want to just move into dogs.
Yes, that's, I think.
Maybe if we just have a 5-minute break and we'll get set up.
Get yourself set up, cool.
Yep.
Sorry, hang on. Yep.